Kenjaku, or as he was currently known, Mrs. Itadori, stood over the fallen body of the dying man. Contrary to Satoru's belief, due to heavenly restriction, even when bleeding out, just barely, the man was still alive.
"Greetings, Mr. Fushiguro. I have an offer for you."
No response.
"Well, I suppose you cannot speak to me well as you cling to life,"
Kenjaku said calmly, and instead leaned down and plucked a piece of flesh from the dying man. Then she looked to the curse that coated the body. She then plucked a piece from the curse, and using gravity, merged the pieces.
"Tojifushiguro, beast of the Zenin, make a binding vow with me. A vow to resurrect in a game of monsters and beasts like yourself. All I need you to do is utter one word. Say yes, and you will partake. Speak it now, or die in vain."
In the mind of the beast, darkness was encroaching faster and faster by the second. He watched as his life played out before him. His childhood, the battle of 1,000 curses, his banishment, his theft, and his first job, along with his first paycheck, and the first ever high of life it provided him. Then, the void when that high, like all others, faded away. The darkness, that ever-familiar darkness, crept in on him then, too. However, he knew a way out. One more job, one more paycheck, one more high. Then, another low, deeper than the one before. One job became 10, 10 became 20, and 20 became 40. And before he knew it, he had slain 100 people. Men, women, children, sorcerer and non-sorcerer alike. The clearest memories were their faces. Some held terror, some were brave, but many held disdain, hatred, malice. The man found himself in a vicious cycle. The moments of spending and the moments of a successful job were all that kept his heart beating, all that kept that man alive. That was until he met her. She was a light, a normal one. No more than a bank teller, one he wouldn't have given a second glance at any other occasion. However, something about the way she looked at him. It wasn't indifference, it wasn't terror, it wasn't greed, it wasn't hatred, and it wasn't disdain or some twisted desire. It was interest. Pure, genuine interest. The first time anyone had ever looked at him that way. In essence, she had saved him. One meeting turned 2, the second turned 10, and 10 turned to love. Love turned into a child. And some part of Toji, some part of tojifushiguro now, no longer a beast of the Zenin, was complete. Happy. He could live his life in peace. However, another part of him could not be laid to rest. Not by her, not by her daughter, not by his own flesh and blood. The part of him that desired that thrill, that hunt, that need. Maybe if left alone, time could pass and that feeling would die. However, all it took was one man coming to his door with a job one day. His love was gone, and his children were in his care. The money, the hunt, the thrill, it had found him again. And as before, one job became 10, 10 became 20, 20 became 40. As if he never left, the sorcerer killer was reborn. Such a rebirth left him bereft of care for the life he had created and cared for. So when the love of his life passed away, he felt strangely free, unshackled, to the point where he abandoned his only son, ready to sell him for a profit when it came to it, and return to the life he always knew. Solitary, desperate, and alone. Now he was encroaching on the present, the memory locking eyes with the dead deity he himself had slain, resurrected to a power beyond creation. Maybe he should have run. Maybe he shouldn't have given in to his desire to spite the world that had spited him. If he had, what would he have done? Run away? Spend the money gambling all over again? And be crawling back towards the next hunt? Chasing the next thrill? Knowing that he had run away from the greatest thrill he could ever encounter. Dying here and now was fine. No matter what, living on would be the same cycle. As the words from the ancient sorcerer registered to the man's slowly dying brain as cataclysmic crashes of pressure, his mind cleared. In a moment, his thought flashed back to the one person he had created, his son. The boy's name meant blessing. How ironic, considering his cursed origins. But he had entrusted that child to the deity who'd slain him, the world that disregarded him. It was a gamble, the final one he'd ever make, at least in this life. Toji had always lost gambles in the past, but as many a time before, the same part of him that craved that thrill stirred once more, the part of him that wanted to see it through to the very end. A single word left his lips to the delight of the woman before him. Yes! Many years later, Kashimo strolled through the colony. These fights were getting boring, more and more boring by the day. Kenjaku had promised him a battle with Sukuna, yet neither the King of Curses nor that shifty rat were anywhere to be found. Men and women fell, curses fell, he fell asleep half the time because none of them were anything close to a challenge. The man had gotten so bored he was simply climbing structures and yelling out the name Sukuna. It was not like anything was dangerous enough to challenge the man. He knew he was powerful, but come on, all the barriers he had to spawn had to be one of the weakest. He had half a mind to actually spend some of those points again. He had already added the player data rule. Why not add a rule that would allow travel between colonies? All he would have to do was search for Sukuna and he'd be good. But then again, running around and looking for Sukuna was much less efficient if the distance he needed to cover was multiplied, especially since he had no doubt Sukuna would start shifting colonies as well. As the days droned on, he started praying to run into that Ishigori guy with a high output, when he began to notice something. More dead. Not just any random dead either. The barrier was swarming with curses, so civilians dying was to be expected. But even sorcerers were being cut down. All in the same way, too. Precise stabs to certain locations. The brain, the heart, the lungs. All the killings were clean, too. Not just in terms of the execution either, but the areas were cleaned of any cursed energy residuals. Every creature left those, even tiny ones, so a creature or sorcerer of this level should have left some trace, but there was nothing left at all. Kashimo was left to ponder. It couldn't be a curse, they wouldn't fight or kill this cleanly. A sorcerer could be this strong and clean, but once again the lack of residuals was something Kashimo couldn't ignore. What did that leave? A mighty natural beast? What beast could really take down sorcerers though? Even an average sorcerer could take down an elephant as far as Kashimo knew. And no elephant left such clean cuts. While this put Kashimo slightly on edge, he couldn't help but get excited. Maybe he shouldn't. It was entirely possible that this beast that was roaming around would be no more than prey, another bolt to the head and dead situation. Or maybe, just maybe, he would have himself some fun. Due to the nature of the dead sorcerers, with stabs specifically through the head and chest, Kashimo decided to play it safe. He continued his patrols but kept his guard up. Cursed energy down and head on a swivel, with nothing more than his footsteps alerting people to his presence, and even those were cloaked by light, repetitive movements. As the numbers thinned ever more in the colony, the clash was bound to happen. And then, the day came when the two beasts crossed paths, ready to bare their fangs at each other. It was in the docks when the two men walked from the opposite side of a shipping crate. Both locked eyes, emeralds and aquamarines intersecting in an instant, and both readied themselves for battle. Due to the unique circumstances of the encounter, neither beast struck just yet. There was too much interest built up in the other to instantly come to blows. It was the beast who transcended cursed energy who broke their silence. "You're the guy who picked this place dry, right? Kashimo?" Toji asked, inverted spear at hand. "And you're the one who's been running around slaughtering the weak, right? What's your name?" Kashimo asked, staff at the ready. "Toji Fushiguro," he answered, studying his opponent. "You seen, Megami Fushiguro?" Kashimo shook his head. "You seen Sukuna?" Kashimo asked, and Toji shook his head in response. Both monsters narrowed their eyes, and glared at the other, as the other had just proven something. They had proven useless. "Then die!" Both said in unison, and the battle between the Monkey King and the Lightning Beast began. Thank you to our final patrons, Strawbones, 4765, Midnight Gemlord, Sean, and Artgoon. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron, Alex Ice Rose. Before we hop into this Battle of the Beast, please do me a favor and leave who you think is going to win in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure you hit that little notification bell to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, do a Patreon down below. You can support for as low as $1 a month. There's exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, you can now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the battle. What's up, guys? Ugly Pencil here, and here we are to do a battle of the beast. In one corner, Kashimo, Hajime, the lightning beast who runs around and slays all those with no more than his trait, hunting down the king. And in the other corner, we have the monster, the beast, the monkey who transcended cursed energy, Toji Fushiguro. Who shall win? Who shall prosper? Find out now. Now, Hajime is a really simple character strength-wise, at least in terms of determination. He should pretty solidly scale relative to a Jackpot Akari in terms of raw striking power, being able to deal out blows that can damage him through his reinforcement and take hits that are empowered by Akari's infinite cursed energy. This easily puts Kashimo in a top echelon of power with his hands and cursed energy reinforcement alone. Hikari and Jackpot should scale above Yuta even in his Rika Amp state, as Yuta says himself, and Yuta is able to contest and survive hits from Ryu Ishiguro, who has the highest reported cursed energy output in history, meaning that Kashimo, through eating hits from Jackpot Akari, should be way above the pay grade of most characters in the series, falling only beneath characters like Ryu and possible other characters like Sukuna and Gojo, being 2 tiers above a person with superhuman strength like Itadori with the Yuta scaling. Then we have his Lightning Bolt, which should just drastically outscale him pretty easily. Unlike his regular strikes, his Lightning Bolt simply tears through Hikari and Jackpot rather than just damaging him, meaning if a hit like this lands on most characters without infinite curse energy and automatic RCT, they basically end up dying instantly depending on where it hits. Now, shockingly enough, Toji's raw strength in terms of sheer force is actually pretty weird to scale, mainly because of who he fights and how he fights them. For who he fights in the narrative itself, he takes on Teen Gojo, Teen Geto, Megumi, and Dagon, and a curse with the highest durability out of any of Geto's curses. Even using Maki, his own direct equivalent, his direct strength feats don't actually get much better. Maki, once awakened, fights Naoya, the Zenin clan, and Naoya again when he's cursed. Now, you may be wondering why this is a problem. We do have some pretty strong people here. But the biggest issue is that Toji's raw stats kind of peak his strength out at the special grade curse level, while the rest is carried by his weapons. For Teen Gojo, he fights a Gojo that is extremely fatigued and low on cursed energy, meaning Gojo's reinforcement would be lower than it typically would, and we know that Toji doesn't scale to a full power Gojo based on the fact that he literally couldn't hit Awakened Gojo, and Toji, even before Gojo was awakened, was not confident in fighting him until he drained him. And then once Gojo gets a nap in and awakens, Toji doesn't even get to hit him again, which just proves that, yeah, he doesn't actually scale to that. So we can't scale him to Awakened Gojo or probably even pre-Awakened Gojo in terms of raw piercing power and striking force. And the Geto he defeats isn't even a special grade yet, only a high grade 1 at the time that he fights him. Meaning that Toji really can't be scaled to special grade sorcerers in terms of cursed energy reinforcement piercing with his raw stats alone. Megumi, while also powerful, is only in grade 1, and he damages him very little, mainly because he doesn't want to fight Megumi even when subconsciously put on pure fight mode, which is less a fault to Toji, mainly because he just loves his son. We can't really knock him for that. And with that being the case, Dagon is pretty strong, but only of the special grade curse level, and arguably the weakest or second weakest of the disaster curses as a whole, meaning that Toji's raw strength without Duraneg in his own fights kind of falls around the high grade 1 sorcerer, low special grade curse tier in terms of output. This kind of output stays the same with Maki equivalency too, because she only fights and beats high grades 1s or low special grades like Naoya, and to even damage curse Naoya, she off-guarded him with a blade that negates durability. Maki did actually punch him, but it didn't really do too much damage. She needed Soul Splitter to really get him up out of here. She only beat him because she managed to completely ignore his domain and then get him with Soul Liberation, which isn't her actual striking force, it's durability negation. So, Toji is strong, but in terms of raw physical stats between the two combatants, I'd have to give the edge to Kashimo by a healthy margin, solidly scaling well above the special grade curse tier and even punching up in the tier of special grade sorcerers, because he's literally fighting someone who is stronger than a special grade sorcerer, in the case of Jackpot Akari being stronger than special grade Yuta. Now, speed is where it gets pretty weird for Kashimo. He doesn't scale to his lightning bolt speed, as he's shown reacting to and fighting evenly with Jackpot Akari, who gets blitzed by a lightning bolt. So while the bolt itself is likely one of, if not the fastest non-domain attack, Kashimo scales to Jackpot Akari in speed. Now, where this puts him in the series is pretty weird. Jackpot Akari should scale above Yuta in terms of speed, or at least relative. And Yuta, due to having more cursed energy than Gojo, even in the modern day, likely means his speed through reinforcement should at least be relative to a freshly awakened Gojo, or a bare minimum fresh pre-awakened Gojo, which in that case should solidly scale Kashimo above characters like Naoya and Naobito, at least in their human states, in terms of combat speed. And in general, for travel speed, it's likely the projection sorcerer still scale below Kashimo, as a casual Yuta is able to keep up with Naoya's casual speed while hunting Yuji, while Yuta's in base. Now, where Toji really shines is his speed. He's constantly described as a blur, making characters like a fatigued teen Gojo, a person with a sixth eye, struggle to perceive him. He's described as letting the Zenin family live on a whim, meaning he has enough raw speed to contest characters like a younger two-armed Naobito and Naoya, and this is even shown when Maki fights human Naoya. With Toji's equivalency to Maki, he should scale to a reaction in combat speed, with Maki being able to react to amped Curse Naoya, though you can argue this was only due to a precog rather than a definitive speed advantage. Even still, with precog, you need to be able to react to some degree with what you're anticipating, which still makes this a good feat for the heavily restricted duo. In terms of speed, it really depends. If you want to use the fact that Toji didn't think he could take a fresh pre-awakened Gojo, and Yuta, just based on CE volume, should be stronger and faster than a pre-awakened Gojo, same with Jackpot Akari, who literally has infinite cursed energy, then that would mean that Kashimo outscales by scaling to a person stronger than full power Yuta, and thus stronger than pre-awakened Gojo, and thus faster. However, if you want to say that Toji should scale above Curse Naoya in speed, Curse Naoya could hypothetically be faster than pre-awakened Gojo, since he eclipses the speed tier of Naobito, the second fastest sorcerer behind a prime Gojo. You could give the edge to Toji. However, I wouldn't do that, particularly because Toji still scales beneath a pre-awakened Gojo, and at best relative, while we have two characters who, at least just based on cursed energy reinforcement and cursed energy volume, should have higher reinforcement than Gojo and thus should be faster. But that really depends. It's a 50-50. I prefer the Yuta above pre-awakened Gojo, pre-awakened fresh Gojo superior to Toji argument, just because it's more solidly linked chain that relies less on speculation about cursed Naoya and the precog arguments, but either way, it's really a 50-50. Now, for abilities, ironically enough, both of these characters have some of the more simple kits in JJK despite their extreme power. For Kashimo, he doesn't actually use his curse technique unless you're Sukuna, like period point blank, but wasn't going to use it in the face of death, so he's not whipping it out against Toji, and besides, it's all hypothetical, so we couldn't even really argue that anyway. However, he does still have a pretty solid kit. One, his Curse Energy trait. This is just a passive ability of his where his Curse Energy is electrified, meaning that any contact with him results in a stun, as if you've been struck by lightning. Well, not lightning exactly, but at least you're going to be electrified. This trait can only be properly ignored if you have extremely high amounts of cursed energy, like Hikari's infinite amount, and even he felt a little bit of it. This also means that anytime Kashimo flares his cursed energy or just directly outputs it, it acts just like electricity would, creating an electric aura around him. Then he can also attach positive charges to his opponent or his staff through contact, and then when built up enough, it can result in a lightning strike that is guaranteed to hit despite being a non-domain attack. As mentioned before, this bolt drastically exceeds his normal output, so it's an extremely dangerous attack. He can also release all his cursed energy at once, creating a massive burst of electric cursed energy like an explosion. He also has the Nioi Staff, a weapon he can use with his cursed energy trait. He also has Holler Wicker Basket, but that negates domains and sure hits are pretty much irrelevant here. However, for Toji, he has a pretty solid arsenal. Being a heavenly restriction, a perfect one at that, he has no cursed energy and thusly no cursed technique, but he compensates for that in different ways. One perk of this is that he's really hard to perceive for most sorcerers. Since sorcerers become reliant on sensing the cursed energy of an opponent for multiple things, from tracking, to strength studying, to the reading of attacks, Toji pretty much negates all of that and can really catch someone who isn't prepared off guard. This advantage can be somewhat nulled by the fact that he has his cursed tools and his curse, which do release cursed energy. But being real, all that will really help with is tracking the assassin, not really analyzing his strength or reading his attacks, unless the attack is specifically being performed by one of the weapons. He also has a wormy boy, a little worm guy that holds all his stuff as it holds onto him, but that's not truly what matters about wormy boy. What matters is what wormy boy holds. He holds Joker's neutral special, a conventional weapon that can be used to catch sorcerers off guard, a regular katana which can also be used to mask his presence while attacking as long as he still has wormy boy eaten, and it also holds a bunch of fly heads to be used as a distraction. Now, we get to the big three in terms of Toji's weaponry. 1. The Chain of 1,000 Miles. This thing essentially gives Toji infinite range. All he needs to do is not show the end of the chain, which is very easy to do with Wormy Boy or in his own hand. This can extend the range of 2 very important weapons. The second most important weapon of Toji's is ironically the most useless in this battle outside of just being a poke-a-poke, and that is the Inverted Spear of Heaven. Its main use is the force to stoppage of all cursed techniques, but akin to Hollow Wicker Basket being useless against Toji since Toji doesn't have a domain, not even any cursed energy, the Inverted Spear of Heaven is useless against Kashimo because he never will and never has used his cursed technique. Well, he may have used it in the past, but he's not going to use it against Toji. And note, the spear specifically stops cursed techniques, not cursed energy reinforcement, so it doesn't count as a Duranag. But here's where we get to Toji's best weapon in this battle, Soul Liberation Blade. Now this right here, this is Duranag. It basically bypasses the conventional durability and hits straight for your soul. This is where Toji's arguably lackluster striking force gets completely made up for because he doesn't need to hit that hard when he's not aiming for your body but aiming for your soul. We've seen that sorcerers can somewhat subconsciously defend their soul, but just based on what this has done to other people, I highly doubt it's an easy thing to do, and Toji will most likely just Duraneg 99.9% of the series, for maybe like crazy exceptions with super strong souls like Gojo and Sukuna themselves. We haven't seen this clip to the Chain of 1,000 Miles, but we'll say it can. Overall, for who has the more useful kit, in this battle and in general, I'd say Toji. He pretty much has a tool for every situation and then some, whereas Kashimo's more simple kit is strong but not as diverse as Toji's. But enough analysis, let's hop into the battle. Now, as you guys know, I love to open these videos with little narratives, but being real with you, I don't think these two, if they happen to be reincarnated in the same era, would ever have a head-on fight if Toji was in character. 1, because I don't think Toji would really participate in the Killing Games in the first place. Like, it's not going to pay him, so he doesn't really care. He's broke. The Killing Games is not going to help him stop being broke unless Kenjaku tells him otherwise. And even with that, I think Toji would watch Kashimo fight, gather intel on him, realize how dangerous he is, and sneak him with Soul Liberation. Or like, something else. Like, he wouldn't attack him directly. However, that's pretty anticlimactic, so I have to make a scenario where they went head to head. And now, I think the biggest issue for both fighters is their big bad final technique. In Kashimo's case, it would be his Lightning Bolt, and in Toji's case, it will be the Soul Liberation Blade. Whoever pulls out their final attack first and lands it, wins. A lot of Toji's arsenal kind of falls flat against Kashimo, with Kashimo probably being able to dodge bullets if pre-awakened Maki can catch them, a Katana likely being unable to pierce Kashimo because of how high his durability is, and the Flyheads being unable to deal with Kashimo's cursed energy trait because they would literally just die on impact. And the Inverted Spear of Heaven is completely useless and possibly even a danger to Toji if he tries to use it. The main things Toji is going to have to rely on are his Soul Liberation Blade, the Chain of 1,000 Miles, and that's it. And here's why. Kashimo is generally a lot more dangerous to Toji in a close range fight than Toji is dangerous to Kashimo. With Kashimo's high level mastery of martial arts, he should be able to compete with Toji hand to hand if it came down to it. And while the Perfectly Heaven restriction is shown to have resistance to a lot of things, it hasn't shown resistance to electricity, meaning that if these two were to ever get close quarters, Kashimo's cursed energy trait should be extremely effective on Toji due to his lack of any cursed energy to even slightly null the shock. And all it would take is one stun to be comboed into a few more hits, into more stuns, and a lightning bolt to the body, which would kill Toji. Since the charges that Kashimo naturally outputs don't lock onto cursed energy, rather the body or the object of the thing he's touching, Toji can't really hope to escape that. And once again, this is likely the fastest non-domain attack in the entire series. It's described as a guaranteed hit, so even with Toji's speed, it's not going to work out well for him once he's built up enough charges. Now, to touch back on an earlier point, why would the Inverted Spear of Heaven be dangerous for Toji to use? Well, in character, at least based on the one in-character fight we have of him, he primarily uses the spear, and it's for good reason. Against most sorcerers, just negging their technique is more than enough to put them down. But since he typically doesn't open with linking the spear to the chain, he's gonna try and fight Kashimo up close, which is exactly where Kashimo excels. This puts Toji in a rough spot on multiple levels. 1, as mentioned before, Kashimo's durability should be way above Toji's in terms of general piercing power, since the spear negates techniques, not reinforcement, meaning each stab may barely pierce, if at all, if he's even fast enough to attempt to stab Kashimo. Kashimo and Toji should be at least bare minimum relative in terms of speed, if not Kashimo having a pretty solid advantage, meaning that Kashimo should be able to react to and block attacks while dealing on his own, all building up the finale of the bolt while stunning Toji. And worse, if Toji doesn't realize that the bolt is just cursed energy, not a technique, he may try to block it with the inverted spear, like he blocked Red and Blue with the inverted spear, which at best may lose him the spear in his hand, and at worst his whole arm, which is essentially an auto loss in my mind. That leaves Toji with two options. One, getting close with Soul Liberation and just get to swinging. Two, stay back, attach Soul Liberation to the 1,000-mile chain, and get to swinging. The second option is safer in my eyes because it completely ignores the charge placing on anything outside his weapon. The biggest issue is that there should be nothing stopping Kashimo from just dodging and weaving between the ranges to get close, grabbing the chain or the hilt of the blade just as it swings, and if he finds out a Duranex or attempting to block it or redirect it with his staff, the element of surprise is just gone. And this may be a wild question, but could Kashimo punch through the Soul Liberation blade? Like, if he swung to the side of the katana rather than its edge, could he break it? I'm not sure. I won't say it's going to be a thing. I mostly think he's going to be dodging it, but it's entirely possible. Overall, though, I think Kashimo wins most of the time these two fight, unless Toji opens with Soul Liberation, which in the one fight of in-character him we've seen with his full kit, he never has. He ends up getting in too close with someone stronger than him physically, while being faster than him, if not relative in speed, gets tagged one too many times, gets paralyzed one too many times, and gets a blast of lightning to the head or body, which instantly GG's him. Even with his healing factor, it would fail to recover him, and a bolt would either detonate his head or take out a chunk of his body too large to heal off. The only way I see Toji winning is if he opens up with Soul Lib, while being charitable enough to grant him superior combat speed, and he bisects Kashimo. Or else, I don't see Kashimo sitting there and letting himself get hit like Jackpot Akari would, meaning that Kashimo would dodge or fight back. Meanwhile, every hit that Toji lands that isn't critical risks him or his weapons, and not to talk of Kashimo just randomly flaring his cursed energy and catching Toji, leading him to a stun shock wombo combo which instantly ends up ending him. I think Toji just has a really bad matchup against Kashimo, because his main stats, which are his speed and strength, are not that impressive to someone like Kashimo who should scale above both of those. And on top of that, his kit, which is mainly built around Inverted Spear into Soul Lib or Inverted Spear into Death, just doesn't work on Kashimo. Kashimo's too durable, he's too fast, and he doesn't use his curse technique at all. So he just kind of bullies Toji when it comes down to kit versus kit and stats versus stats, which leaves Toji with pretty much nothing. Like, if Toji's not faster than you, stronger than you, and can stabby you, you're kinda done, son. And considering, once again, we have no idea if the heavily restricted users can resist something like electricity, they kinda just get wombo comboed. Like, legitimately, I don't see Kashimo really struggling with Toji either. Once again, if we be fair to Kashimo, which is like giving him where he should be, like an easy special grade rank in terms of just raw power and output, he should just legitimately bully Toji. Like, straight up, he'd get bored by just slamming him a couple times, hitting him in the chest, hitting him in the stomach, hitting him in the face. Toji's already from being paralyzed over and over and over again. And then Kashimo's like, wow, you know, I knew I shouldn't have gotten my hopes up. Instantly lightning bolts him. It's a guaranteed hit. His whole torso is blown apart. I got nothing for Toji. Toji's in a really rough spot here, and I think he really does bad against a lot of the special grades. Like, and anyone who scales to them too. There's one special grade I think he has a solid matchup against, but even then, their durability is also kind of crazy. And the way their technique works, he may not be able to hit him with Soul Liberation quick enough after the Inverted Spear, because he needs the Inverted Spear to be able to get through to them. But that's another video for another time. However, that's what I think about Toji versus Kashimo in this matchup. I do think Toji kind of gets that. I think he literally has a 1 in 10 chance of winning. Meanwhile, I think Kashimo wins 9 times out of 10. Like, you would have to blatantly make Kashimo out of character in terms of him standing there and letting himself get hit by a curse tool, which no sorcerer does. Like, that's just not a thing. Even Kashimo, as crazy as he is, and as much as he loves a good fight, he wouldn't just stand there. But, like I said, these are my thoughts. These are how I think it would go down. What do you guys think? Do you think Toji has a shot? Do you think I'm missing something? Do you think Toji scales higher in speed, output? Do you think his tools will be able to do something? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a Patreon down below, and support for as low as $1 a month, including exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, you can now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off.